Hello. So I just wanted to give a heads up that this video is going to make no sense unless you look up and listen to the Loveville High podcast. Just go on iTunes, YouTube, any podcast app, listen to it, and then come back to this video. But for all of you who have been listening to Loveville High, let's continue. Okay, so now that the disclaimer is over, let's get into it. These are some conspiracy theories about the Loveville High podcast. There have been 7 episodes out so far, and funny enough, I have 7 theories. Just one more note, none of these are connected. Theory number 1 is that the entire podcast series takes place after Jane fainting. If any of you had listened to episode 1, you would know that Jane had a fainting incident at a dance. But what if after that fainting incident, she imagined herself getting ready for her prom and all of that in a coma because she didn't recover, but she's imagining what her prom would have been like and what would happen to all her friends. And she knew that Chas was pregnant because that was mentioned, but her brain just figured out how many months and stuff like that, and she knew how she was going to help Johnny, and she knew all of this stuff already. But it happens in her dream because this takes place after she fainted. The second theory is that I feel like Loveville High could possibly be connected to Glee, as in Glee and Loveville High are in the same universe. The first thing is that they both take place in cities in Ohio. Glee is in Lima, Ohio. Loveville High is in Loveville, Ohio. And they're both very musical towns. I mean, why wouldn't they be connected in some kind of way? You know, 2 musical towns in Ohio of all places? I mean, Ohio's pretty small. I don't see why they wouldn't be connected. And another theory that adds to this is that Ali Stroker was in both shows. She's in Loveville High, and she was on 1 episode of Glee. Also, I love her, by the way. So here's my thought. In episode 6 of Loveville High, we see Amanda switch out of phases very quickly. Like, she's in and out of phases about love. First, she's upset, then she feels like Kyle broke her heart, and then she's like, no, you know what, I don't like anyone, and Wanda talks about how much of a tease she is. And then she suddenly loves Wanda again. They kissed in, like, an earlier time. And the thing is that Amanda's flirt personality, where she is not really all into love, kind of reminds me of her Glee character, Betty. So I'm thinking that considering she switches in and out of sides so rapidly, what if Betty was one of her personalities, and coincidentally the personality that Miss Pillsbury, her aunt, is most familiar with. So that's why when she talks about her to Artie, she says Betty and not Amanda, because Betty is the personality that she's the most familiar with, and also I don't think Emma is the smartest person. Sorry about that. So Amanda was in her Betty personality at Will's wedding on Glee, and that's the personality when she was playing really hard to get with Artie. Now, if anyone saw that Glee episode, Artie does win in the end, and quote-unquote Betty softens up, but maybe the softer side is like the Amanda side, and the sticking with like side is more of the Betty side, and a lot of people just like don't know that she has these different personalities. So I just feel like, you know, they take place in the same town and stuff like that, and then there's that. Also the fact that Betty appears in 1 episode, okay? She could have easily just gone back to Loveville and then broken up with Artie, and that was that, because that side of her that just doesn't care. She could have just gone back to Loveville, and that's that. So that's my Loveville High Glee theory. You know, again, I would love to see them have parties together. That would have been so funny. Okay, so now I'm moving on to theory number 3, and I don't know if you can look at this the same way again. Theory number 3 is that Kyle is the actual father of Chas's baby. So in episode 3, we learn, you know, Chas is pregnant at a prom. She's 8 months pregnant, and the father is apparently some jock named Zeke. Or is it? So we know that, yes, Zeke and Chas had sex, like the pipe burst in her house, and then he came over to do some plumbing and his pipe burst in her. We all remember that, right? Right. But it's so clear when you listen to it that Chas has been doing whatever she could to keep Zeke away from her. And what if she was doing this because Zeke is not the actual dad? Kyle is a serial player, you know? He was texting 22 girls on Tinder, which was revealed in episode 4. And coincidentally enough, Chas was hiding from people in episode 3, and Kyle was hiding from people in episode 4. And with Kyle being such a serial player, Chas could have been one of the 22 girls he was texting. And he lied to everybody about polyamory, so what if he used that to sleep with Chas? And Chas wanting to give up the baby for adoption is very noble and responsible, but what if she's also doing it in case the baby looks like Kyle and people would figure out that she banged someone else's boyfriend? I mean, that would ruin her reputation a lot more. Also, Zeke talks about, like, oh, there's a place for us on the roof to mess around and stuff like that. Okay, now, honestly, this is why I don't like Zeke particularly. I made a joke about wanting to punch him in my first Loveville High video. I still feel that way. Because why would you say that to someone you're not even with, and especially when they're that pregnant? But what if also she didn't want to go do that because Kyle was on the roof? And considering how much of a player Kyle is, he wouldn't want to face the mess that is going on, and so he's just detaching himself from reality, texting all these girls, and just trying his best not to be around that situation. I mean, there's even a line in the song where Chas says to Zeke that he's not the dad, and then Zeke freaks out, and she's like, no, what I meant was then the whole adoption thing, but I mean, you know, I don't know. Another thing is that she says a line about, look at me after talking to a guy, and she says that's to Gendrix, but she never says, look at me after talking to Zeke. She just says, a guy, and the only guy talking to a lot of girls was Kyle, and yeah, you know, she goes into labor and all that, and it would look bad both for her and Kyle if it turns out he was the one who knocked her up. So Zeke's gonna be there for the birth, and Kyle is just detaching himself from reality because he can't face it. So, and Chas never brings this up because it would ruin her reputation even more. And that's my theory about Kyle actually being the father of Chas's baby. Theory number 4 is actually also about Kyle. So I have this other theory that pertains to a few of the episodes, but that in episode 4, Kyle actually threw himself off of the roof, and what happened with Amanda in that episode was a hallucination. I think that what if Amanda and Kyle actually never communicated about Kyle's texting situation, but Kyle was imagining what Amanda's reaction would be if she found out, considering he was lying to everybody. But what if maybe Noah was the one who told Amanda, and Kyle was just having a freak attack on the roof because he's schizophrenic and he's visualizing this? Because Noah is in love with Amanda. He has said it. There's that whole song in episode 5. It's kind of funny. But what if he went and told Amanda and then acted like he never told her to be a good friend to Kyle? Because no one knew about the Tinder addiction. So what if maybe he told Amanda and that's how Amanda ended up in the bathroom? But Kyle was imagining everything and threw himself off the roof and just pictured Amanda being crushed. Because, I mean, at the same time, Amanda suddenly cares and then doesn't care that, you know, Kyle kind of broke her heart, so maybe he just visualized it because he also still wants someone who cares because he's a serial player. And, you know, Noah patches Kyle up because he's still a good friend. So, yeah, basically, like, what if he hallucinated the entirety of episode 4 and threw himself off the roof? I'm going to move on to number 5 now, and number 5 is a theory about Gendrix, and I'm thinking that maybe Gendrix also has some kind of multiple personality disorder. And one of the personalities is Gendrix, and what is whatever their previous name was, because they state that their name was a name that did not fit them. And they couldn't change it in the yearbook, but if they were 2 different personalities, that would have been pretty cool. And then the other personality is David Bowie. Like, he sees him... I am a terrible person. they see themselves as David Bowie, and because they're dressed like David Bowie, and while they're dressed like David Bowie, you know, they don't know who One Direction is, they don't know anything about modern culture, and what was great about Corey is that Corey unknowingly brings Gendrix into more of a reality by saying to them, you don't need to sparkle like this other person, you can just sparkle like yourself. And that brings Gendrix to more of a reality, and Codrix is still Bay. Theory number 6 is that Gendrix is a time traveler. Now, here's the thing. Again, they dress like an old star. They don't know anything about anything modern. So what if Gendrix actually traveled into the future so they could experience a prom where they could be more accepted? And that's the case with Gendrix. And of course, Corey doesn't know that. Nobody knows that. But what if Gendrix actually traveled into 2019 and just wanted to enjoy prom in 2019, but it's also very overwhelmed because in high school this kind of stuff wasn't as open as it was in the 70s, 80s, whatever. So that's another Gendrix theory. Okay. My last theory, theory number 7, is that Madison and Seth are actually ghosts. Episode 7, Seth sings about being sweaty, and Madison talks about not eating for multiple days. So my theory is that Seth and Madison actually died under the food table, Seth dying from heat exhaustion or a heat stroke, and Madison dying of not eating. And while they are both dead, their spirits or ghosts are still very much alive, and they just want to continue with the prom. And maybe Seth is nervous and having anxiety because people might figure out he's a ghost. He also likes a goth girl. I mean, goth people sometimes like dead things. If I'm wrong, you know, I watch a lot of TV. Sorry about it. So there's that. But if you've listened to episode 7 at the end, Seth and Madison fall for each other, and Madison thinks about wanting the normal amazing, and, you know, Seth's spirit feeds her spirit, and she's feeling better. So the normal part is the love, but the amazing part is what they found within each other, and they found each other as spirits, and that what was so amazing. It's what was so amazing. So yeah, those are my 7 completely ridiculous Loveville High Conspiracy Theories. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you guys had a good April Fool's Day a couple days ago, and good night. Keep sparkling.